I now have 6 o'clock. It's time to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting of Tuesday, September 14th. I'm missing one commissioner. Who's that? Oh, Art, see, right, two. Missing Commissioner Porter and Commissioner Deaver, but we still have a quorum. Let's move right into the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to move right now into item number 4, which is the citizen comment period. Can I get somebody to close that back door for me, please?
Oh.
There's a
Thank
glare.
you. Dr. Miller, nobody signed up for the citizen comment period.
Okay, so we can skip over that. It's separate and distinct from the comment period for the public hearing, just so everybody knows. We will move, therefore, into the business items. The business item 5A is the approval of the minutes from the August 10th meeting. I trust that each commissioner has a chance to peruse them, criticize them, et cetera, et cetera. Any changes they want to make to the minutes from August 10th? I'm seeing shaking heads. Then I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of August 10th, Planning and Zoning.
I have a motion. I need a second, please.
Second.
I have several seconds. All in favor? Aye. The minutes are approved. Business item 5B, and this is the moving into some of the items that were discussed at City Council meeting that were applicable to the Planning and Zoning Commission. There were 3 things discussed at the City Council meeting that I thought were applicable to Planning and Zoning. Number 1, they approved our recommendation for the master development plan of Pension Mark building on the vacant lot at Nacogdoches and Nacogdoches Loop. In addition, they approved the recommendation we sent forward to them to appoint Colonel Leatherberry to place 6, and they also approved our recommendation to them to continue with Commissioners Miller, Hill, and Deaver into another 2-year term starting on September 30th, I believe it is. Moving into item number 5B2, we can have a quick update probably on the 2252 sewer power project and the TxDOT FM 2252 expansion. We carry this over from month to month to keep us cognizant and up to date on those 2 projects in the city. Ms. Kane?
Thank you, Chairman Miller. The 2252 wastewater project, they are finishing up some electrical work there at the holding tank on Nacogdoches Loop, and they're preparing to do a walkthrough of the project so we can final the project. 2252, I really don't have much of an update on that.
Okay, thank you. Moving forward to business item 5B3, the master land use plan. We're going to discuss and make possible recommendations related to the master land use plan. That's kind of rolling into the draft zoning ordinance we're going to talk about this evening. I think most of the people in the audience and ourselves were focused on the presentation and an introduction to the new zoning ordinance that we plan to do this evening. Councilman Valdez prepared a nice slideshow synopsis, if you will, to the new zoning ordinance. And It was not that lengthy, but we divided it up into sections, so each of us covered a certain section, and then we don't get a consistent monotone the whole time. I guess we can start out with that presentation. I'm first up, actually. This slide speaks for itself. This is an introduction to this new zoning ordinance. Slide number 2 is the executive summary. Basically, what we're going to try to do is not read the slides to you unless it's absolutely necessary. You can read the slides as well as we can. And I think it's important to realize that everything we say tonight is available on the website, on the city's YouTube channel, on various social media outlets with commentary, and also if you really feel compelled and wanted a copy of it in your hand, you can stop by City Hall and they'll give you a copy of it. The highlights of this slide is basically we're not doing anything with the three-quarter acre lots. Garden Ridge is going to remain a city with mostly or predominantly three-quarter acre lots. That requires a septic system, and that's the reason we have to have three-quarter acre lots. There is some areas of the city, an area of the city, where we have a potential medium density residential area. And you'll see that later on in the presentation. In that area, we can actually have 10,000 square foot lots, which if you do the math, is about a quarter acre. So potentially, for lack of a better word, you could put tract homes in that area. But it will require a wastewater system, which you heard earlier, we're getting in the city at a certain area, and it will potentially service that area. More importantly, we had a lot of brouhaha over the years about a hotel. There's no area for a hotel in the city, okay? The citizens told us they didn't want one. We heard you. There's no area for apartments in the city. Citizens said they didn't want apartments in the city. There's no area in the city for apartments. I'm hitting the wrong thing. Slide number 3 talks about the master land use plan and why plan. This master land use plan was actually started, I think it was March, April 2017. We actually brought in an outside firm, Freese and Nichols, which is well-versed in public and city planning, to help us because it was obvious that we didn't have the expertise on the commission or in city staff at that time to undertake a rewrite of the ordinance that goes along with the master land use plan. The ordinance we had before was outdated compared to the things we wanted to do with the master land use plan. Freese and Nichols got their information through a survey. Some of you in the audience may remember a big survey they sent out, and we canvassed the city. I think it went to everybody that had a water bill at that time, and plus some. And they provided, citizens provided some feedback about what they wanted and what they saw in the future of Garden Ridge. That survey itself is part of the master land use plan, which again is on the website and can be downloaded if you want, okay? If you're that interested. It's a lot of good information. I've read it 3 or 4 times about demographics, the city itself, et cetera, et cetera. It's very, very interesting. Why do you plan? Well, you plan because we all want, and it was obvious that we want Garden Ridge to look like Garden Ridge, okay? You want to come into Garden Ridge and say, okay, this is Garden Ridge. If you ride north on 2252, we want to be able to differentiate where Garden Ridge starts and where Bracken ends. I think we all know that. You can come in and say, okay, this is Garden Ridge, and it looks different, and we want to keep that difference. Unfortunately, the city doesn't control the private sector, okay? That land belongs to people, and they can control, to a certain extent, what they can put on that land, okay? We give them guidance more than anything else. The plan is a framework for future policy, infrastructure planning, and decisions that were made into the future. The backbone of the future land use plan is the master land use or future land use map, okay? It is not a zoning map. It gives you a guideline for the zoning map, but it's not the zoning map per se. This map is a long-range guide for balanced, compatible, and diversified land use as outlined by the citizens and by Freeze and Nichols. That's what this future land use map is all about. There's some copies of this available on the table over there. We couldn't project it on both screens at the same time. And so you can look where the areas are, but you can probably not see it real well because the writing is kind of small. That's why we handed it out to everybody. You can take a peek at it. Oh, they do have it on both screens. They told us we couldn't get it on both screens.
Couldn't leave it on one.
They couldn't leave it on one when we go forward. That's what it is, okay. So when we're talking about, we'd like to be able to talk about it and point to it at the same time. We can't do that. So you have one in your lap to be able to do that. I've seen this map so many times over the last 4 years, I could draw it in my sleep. The special planning areas outlined on the map reflected the fact that Garden Ridge back in 2017 was actually at that time 78% built out. The remaining areas were undeveloped areas and divided into five major areas, okay? And then what we did was divide it down and better cast a vision for those areas. Again, and this is important, the city can't control the development market, but what it can do is promote the desired community vision. That's what we call ourselves doing. Again, I just spoke about the special planning areas. They're basically the undeveloped areas left in the city, okay? And there they are, just with some outlining of pointing to them. And I don't know if I don't think your map has those, but they correspond to this slide. In summary, for my part of the presentation, let me say this, and this is important. It's very important. The City Council serves as the Board of Adjustments, okay? They are the elected officials. They are the decision makers. The city administrator is the zoning administrator. When you see those terms in the ordinance, that's what those people and that council serves those functions, okay? Not to worry, the definitions are at the back end of the ordinance. The Planning and Zoning Commission, and this is very important as well, we're responsible for making recommendations as appointed representatives of the citizens, okay? So we make recommendations to the City Council, and they, in coordination with the city administrator, decide whether something goes forward or not. Now I'll turn over the presentation to my colleague, Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Moving right along, we'll be on slide. Oh,
Got this back up? Okay.
yep. Go into zoning districts. I am going to read this, just to set the stage here. Zoning districts were created to specify the nature and components of the permitted development within them, and to establish regulations regarding the physical character and intensity of development in order to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare. So the city is divided into certain zones and/or districts, and I'm going to explain these now. These are the new districts, but I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay, here they are again. This is simply giving you which one is it? Oh, there we go. What doesn't show up on there, does it? Just barely. The left side shows you what we're going from, and then the right side, of course, would be the proposed, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, the current would be proposed in this particular draft of the new ordinance. So you can see residential agriculture will go to AG. The current single-family dwelling will go to residential estate, as will the country club district will also go to residential estate. And then we're also creating a residential neighborhood district, which has got the code RN there. And those are the residential districts. The non-residential and mixed-use districts. B2, which is office and professional, will now be neighborhood commercial. B1, which is neighborhood service, will now be community commercial. And then we're creating the neighborhood mixed use and the community mixed use. And then light industrial will remain light industrial, and industrial zone will just change the distinction from Z1 to HI, heavy industrial. Okay, we're going to go into the residential zoning districts. The first one, agriculture. It includes lands or properties in the city that are typically, I'm going to say, over 3 or 5. Is it over 3 or 5, or what's typical for the AG? Is it over 5? I don't know well, the larger lots in the city. It is intended to retain a rural character and have the potential for urban growth. On those properties, agriculture areas should not be detrimental to the land. RE, which is the lion's share of the property in the city. All the lots that are 3/4 acre and larger that are not agricultural. Intended to retain the rural character, while also still having the potential for growth. And like we mentioned on the first slide in my part of the presentation, it includes the former country club district. The one we're creating, RN, which is residential neighborhood, includes land that could be subdivided for single-family residential purposes. That would allow for up to 4 units per acre, the 10,000 square foot lots that Dr. Miller was talking about earlier. It would need to be served by a public sewer system. And I just want to be clear that medium density will not be permitted in any of the RE district, just to make you all aware of that. Okay, moving into the non-residential, which would most likely be, commercial. The newly created NC, Neighborhood Community District, formerly B2, is intended to provide for goods and services and typically located within 1/2 to 1 mile from the residential areas. The goal is to integrate them carefully so that they fit with the surrounding homes and neighborhood. And they should have pedestrian access to the residential area. Community commercial, intended to provide areas for retail and commercial activities along arterial streets that primarily serve the residential areas within 3 to 5 miles. Community commercial will not be permitted along residential streets or residential collectors unless it's at an intersection with an artery, an arterial street. Neighborhood mixed use. Intended to provide a mixed-use urban fabric with a wider range of buildings, type, setback, and street types. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I just want to explain to you that in the next part of the presentation, we're going to go a little more in depth of what some of these are, just to explain them a little more to you. This is the broad explanation of them. Neighborhood mixed use is intended to reinforce appropriate scale development and encourage uses that are compatible with existing residential areas. I don't know if you have the map for it, but they can be placed in special planning areas 2 and 3. Community mixed use, intended to provide a mixed use urban fabric. Excuse me? Oh. Speak up? Okay, let me just pull it closer. Neighborhood mixed use is intended to provide a mixed-use urban fabric with a wider range of building types. Intended to reinforce appropriate scale development and encourage uses that are compatible with existing residential areas. Also can be in special planning areas 2 and 3. Community mixed use, intended to provide a higher density mixed use fabric that accommodate a wide variety of retail, office, and possibly residential uses. It should have a tight network of streets and drives, wide pedestrian facilities, street, drive, tree plantings, and buildings set close to the pedestrian facilities. It may be placed in special planning areas 3 and 4. Light industrial, same as the current, or I'm sorry, did not change the name. It's intended to provide an area for business parks, light industry, and office warehousing that will not generate nuisance such as smoke, heavy traffic, or traffic. Will be located close to arterial and non-residential collectors to facilitate the vehicle traffic and keep it out of the neighborhoods. Public and institutional district, basically where we're at here, the schools, libraries, community centers, parks. Then we have 3 protection overlay districts. Now they will overlay the particular zoned areas, and you'll see as I explain. The Aquifer Protection Overlay District is a boundary around the public water supply with a 1,500-foot radius out from the water supply. And it's there to protect any contamination of bacteriological, chemical, or radiological pollution so that it doesn't get back into the aquifer. Natural Feature Overlay District. The purpose of this is to to retain the rural and natural character of both FM 3009 and 2252, while still allowing for responsible growth. And that overlay district is 200 feet out on either direction from those roads. And then the PUD, or the Planned Unit Development. A zoning district that may be used to permit new or innovative concepts in land utilization, and I apologize for reading this one. Master plan communities or mixed-use development that the current zoning does not accommodate. Greater flexibility to allow special conditions or restrictions that would not otherwise allow development to occur. The purpose is to promote development that is more sensitive to the natural environment or otherwise enhance the standard pattern of development in the city. Again, the next few slides will help explain these just a bit. And thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Jackman.
All right, well, in this section, I'll be talking about the use regulations, which are found in the ordinance, the proposed ordinance, section 2.05 on the land use regulations. This basically kind of breaks down and gives you, we're drilling down now into those districts on what use regulations can be on those districts. So it's the land and buildings in each of these zoning districts may be used for any of the specific uses listed in this section of the ordinance. Buildings and land can only be used in the specified permitted uses as shown in the use chart that I'll go over in a little detail. Here's just a quick guide that we have in the ordinance. It's just an index that kind of, we have a table that I'll show you here in the next slide that it's color-coded with letters. Basically, the P with a green is a use is permitted by right. There's the P in yellow with a number sign, and that number sign refers to a subsection in the section 2.05 that you could refer to by the use. And you'll see that in the chart when I go through it. S is with the orange, highlighted in orange, is use is permitted upon approval of a specific use permit. And the blue is use is permitted upon approval of a specific use permit and subject to the reference conditions in section 2.0506. And then, of course, the last is the shade gray in X that use is prohibited in those districts. So here's the table that I was referencing, and here we have it broken up into the residential use, and you'll see that, oops, let me go back. Here, you'll see on that gray, these are residential uses. So you have your community home and group home, dwelling accessories, dwelling multifamily, and so on. I won't go through all of them because there's many in here. But I'll take a couple examples. For example, I'll take the dwelling accessory, and you'll see on the very top, I forgot to mention, you have the zoning districts up here. Sorry, I know my pointer, the laser's not very bright on the screen, but I'm pointing it here on your right screen. And those are your zoning districts that my previous commissioner spoke about, that he went through. So for example, a dwelling accessory, you'll see here that it is permitted in agricultural and homestead. We refer to it as AG district, and that's with a P. It's permitted by the use, which is just in your community home or group home. And then another example is like your dwelling single family detached. It's permitted in your agricultural district, in various districts, in your residential estate district, your residential neighborhood district, and also in your neighborhood mixed-use overlay district and your community mixed-use district. And then also wanted to mention here, it'll give you on the chart the parking requirements for those that type of use that's required. I'll just kind of go through, and here we have on the table the non-residential uses. And I'll just kind of hit a couple of highlights. For example, if you're coming in wanting to have an animal shelter, bed boarding with like an outside yard kennel, that's permitted by right. You'll see there in the P in green, and that's allowed in your agriculture and agricultural homestead district, the AG. And it's also permitted in your light industrial, LI. So this is a nice reference, and you'll see the parking requirements for that is, one parking required spaces for every 400 square feet. So this is a nice chart as a reference for you to go through, and just a quick guide that kind of gives you a really good idea on what's permitted. The use is permitted for those zoning districts. I won't go. One more that I get, some popular ones that may come about as development does occur on the areas we've identified. On the commercial side, on 2252 is, for example, like maybe a brewery, a microbrewery. That's, there's an S, which is use is permitted upon approval for specific use, and that's allowed in the community mixed use district overlay. And then it's also permitted in your light industrial and your heavy industrial. So, I won't go through all of them because there's a lot of uses, but they're there for you as a reference. Here's just kind of a little summary, how to kind of navigate through that chart. The chart contains residential and non-residential uses, like I kind of explained. The letters A through M mean, like I mentioned, the use that is permitted by right and subject to the reference condition, permitted upon approval. The next, now I turn it over to Commissioner Diaz to kind of talk about the dwelling accessories, the garage sales, and short-term rentals.
Oh, here we go. Moving right along, we will start talking about Section 20506. I want you to know that the complete requirements for this section can be located on pages 36 through 48. And today, what we're going to do is just highlight some of the items for this topic. Dwelling accessory. Not more than one accessory dwelling shall be permitted on a lot. Accessory dwellings may be occupied only by guests, a caregiver, or a family member. Accessory uses located in residential districts shall not be used for commercial purposes, other than those authorized and legitimate home occupations. Item 20506F, home-based business. We're going to focus on garage sales on this, in this topic. Garage sales are allowed only on property zoned agriculture and agricultural homestead, AG, or residential estates, RE, and residential neighborhood districts. The provisions for garage sales also include yard sales and estate sales. So some of the items that are key to these kinds of sales are you are permitted to have a sale 2 times per calendar year per household, and only between the hours of 8 to 5 p.m. They may not exceed 3 days in length, and there must be a minimum of 5 days between sales. You may not block streets for parking. permits will be required to conduct garage sales. And one of the reasons that this is important, these stipulations are important, is because if you do not follow these regulations, for example, you hold the sale for too many days, or say for instance, for a length of more than 8 to 5, you could be reclassified as a home-based business. And there are a lot of stipulations in that section 20506 for home-based business. Okay, short-term rentals. I know that this might be a touchy subject for many residents, but legally, we have to allow them in our city. This draft ordinance, though, stipulates where they can be allowed. So, the rental for compensation of a dwelling as defined in the International Residential Code for the purpose of overnight lodging for a period of not less than 1 night nor more than 30 days. Here's a good one. Short-term rental is a commercial use and is prohibited in residential districts. Short-term rental is permitted in the following zoning districts: neighborhood commercial, community commercial, neighborhood mixed-use overlay district, and community mixed-use overlay district. A short-term rental permit is required. You can find all the stipulations for short-term rentals on pages 43 through 48 of the draft ordinance, and I would highly suggest that if you have an interest or if you're not happy with this, look at all the stipulations and regulations. Moving to zoning dimensional regulations table. This table is going to be a synopsis, once again, of some of the information that you were given in previous slides. For example, it sets the minimum for building setback distance, for lot sizes and dwellings per acre, lot frontage, width, and length, and the maximums for building height, building coverage, and impervious cover. This is done very nicely in a table in 20507. So let me just highlight residential estate, the first yellow column. So the maximum area square foot in this district is 32,670, which really translates to the minimum 3/4 acre lot. The maximum building coverage is 25%, and maximum impervious cover is 35%. This district, the stipulations and regulations for this district haven't changed. Residential neighborhood district. This is a new district and has been designated to Special Planning Area Number 5 on your land use map. This district would allow for the previously mentioned minimum 10,000 square foot lots with a maximum dwelling unit of 4 per acre. The maximum building coverage is 40%, and the maximum impervious cover is 50%. Moving to neighborhood mixed-use overlay district. This has been, you can have this district in special planning areas 2 and 3 on your land use map. This one allows for a maximum dwelling unit of 6 units per acre. The maximum building coverage in this overlay district is 60%, and your maximum impervious cover is 65%. Community mixed-use overlay district would allow up to 8 dwelling units per acre. with 60% maximum building coverage and 65% impervious cover. I've highlighted those because I think those are the most, the ones that residents are most wanting to know about. And again, this table just puts in a succinct page information that you got previously on the individual slides regarding the districts. Development regulations. This covers regulations for future development such as landscaping, fencing, parking, building materials, lighting, and other items. The next slides will cover some of these regulations. The Section 20604 talks about accessory structures. And for people who are wondering, well, what is an accessory structure? Some examples are an RV port, a tool house, a greenhouse, a storage shed, a gazebo, and the like, but not limited to just these examples. An accessory structure must be constructed to match the main structure in terms of material, design, and color. Item 7 on 20604, table number 6, gives you the dimensions and dimensional regulations for what will be allowed. Let's go to the third column where it talks about 3/4 acre lots and larger. The maximum number of accessory structures that will be allowed in 3/4 acre or larger lots is 3, with a maximum floor area for all accessory structures of 3,000 square feet. In lots less than 3/4 of an acre, you can only have 2 accessory structures with a maximum floor area of 1,000 square feet. Accessory structures connected to the main structure via a sidewalk or breezeway shall be considered a separate structure and not part of the main structure. Now, this you need to be aware of because this is a change from the current ordinance. And if you want to look at this later on, it's on page 71. It's on the website. Yes. Development regulations, page 20607, the highlights for storage and use of vehicles and equipment in residential districts. Provides parking requirements for recreational vehicles, house trailers, boats, and commercial or farm vehicles. Lighting is covered under 206.10, and the lighting regulation is in there to regulate or to reduce and prevent light pollution in the city. You should go to these sections to see all the requirements for these topics because these are just the highlights. Section 3 are supplemental development regulations, and they include requirements for site visibility triangle, sign regulation, outdoor antennas, tree preservation, and flagpoles. Please use the draft ordinance from pages 119 through 131 for specific regulations with regard to each one of those topics. That concludes our slideshow presentation, where hopefully we have highlighted special interest topics to most of you residents. Thank you for your attention, and for your attendance. Once again, the draft zoning ordinance can be obtained in its entirety under the city website under Document Center. Now I will turn it over to Chairman Miller.
That concludes the presentation of the introduction to the new zoning ordinance. I got a couple of things I could say to sum it up. Like if it's not in the use chart, you can bring it to us, but it's probably not going to go any further if it's not in the use chart. Okay, what you want to do. If you're an entrepreneur and have something you want to do, if it's not in the use chart for that area, it's probably not going to get out of planning and zoning. It's as simple as that. It's a guide, and we'll probably pretty much stick to it. We have in the past, and we plan to in the future. We made these recommendations and the ordinance changes based on a lot of work over the last 3.5 years, and we think we nailed it, although we know we didn't, okay? There'll be questions about a lot of things. Hopefully, we haven't bored you this evening with even the short presentation. Again, it's available on the website or on the YouTube channel. At this time, we'd like to hold the public hearing. And I'd like to start the public hearing at 6:47. This is when the audience gets up and asks us questions based on our presentation or what they perused in the ordinance prior to attending the meeting this evening. We ask that you state your name and address, and you're limited to, I think it's 3 minutes. Any takers?
Yeah. Richard Fritz, 8927 Garden Ridge Drive. Got a question about Area 5, the mixed medium-density residential. You quoted the maximums, like the impervious cover and the size of the dwelling. What I'm more concerned about is the minimums and whether or not it will live up to Garden Ridge standard codes as far as like side entry garages, masonry, roofs, minimum, like I said, minimum size of the building. Could you address that, please?
In the chart, there's also information. I just highlighted a couple of items. There are minimum lot frontage, square footage, and minimum lot width for the various areas, including special area number 5. And so you can find that information, I hope, in this chart. One of the things that we probably needed to mention, while we have designated a special planning area number 5 for the possibility for medium-density housing, you all need to understand that unless a developer comes forward and wants to do this, it won't happen. This is not city property. This is privately owned property, and so it all depends on whether or not a developer would want to put medium-density housing there. So.
Next, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name's Jack Miner, 22318 Lamona Cove, and I have actually a couple questions. The first, to piggyback off the gentleman, will the existing zoning ordinance be grandfathered so that if we have a pergola and it has a sidewalk leading to the main structure, is that grandfathered within the current process, or will in fact it now become a separate structure?
So for anything that is currently existing, if it is legally currently existing and it's non-conforming or conforming under the ordinance, it remains in place. There are provisions in the ordinance that amateurize certain nonconforming uses, but those uses only go away, say for instance, your pergola right now is conforming, but, you know, lightning strikes it, God forbid, and you wanted to rebuild it. And if you are rebuilding and it no longer fits within the new ordinance requirements, the answer would be, so sorry, you can't rebuild it because it no longer conforms to the existing regulations. But to the extent something is legally conforming and exists, it can continue to exist in its current state until such time that it has to be either rebuilt, remodeled, or something along those lines.
Okay, awesome, thank you. The second question I have is, I think several of us have. What does future acquisition mean? Because I'm in that zone where it's circled future acquisition. What does that mean? Or potential future acquisition? It is
I think what you're referring to.
low-density residential?
Yeah, I think on the future land use map, the city planners and people we contracted to help us do the planning, they envisioned possibly trying to annex certain areas and get them into the city, okay? Now, the way the law is written now, stop me, city attorney, if I start lying, okay, stop me. But the way I understand it is, people in that area for future acquisition have to petition the city to be acquired. We can't do it the other way around. We can't make them come into the city. If, say, people are living in either one of any of those future acquisition areas, say, you know, Garden Ridge got some good quality water system, fire system, et cetera, and we want to be part of Garden Ridge, they can petition us to be a part of Garden Ridge, and we may or may not take them on, but we can't do it the other way around by law. Am I right?
That is correct.
Does that answer your question?
Not necessarily, because we're already in Garden Ridge. We're right over here in George Ranch, and I see it circled right there.
I think it's more circled the area across the street from George Ranch more than anything else. Not necessarily George Ranch. The other thing is the city planners looked in, they wanted to make a walking trail through the city, okay? Connecting all the little neighborhood parks, Paul Davis Parks, and things like that. It's pie in the sky, okay? Because some of it goes down residential streets, cuts across people's properties, et cetera, et cetera. It may not happen, okay? But when they plan into the future, they say, we'd like to do that.
Sir, I think maybe what you're looking at the dotted circles right there, kind of, yes, right there. I don't think it's future connections possibly. Is that correct, Nancy?
It says potential acquisition area, according to the key at the bottom.
Well, there's a small circle and then there's so Nancy, do you want to elaborate?
The two that you're talking about close to Larmona Cove, you are currently in the city of Garden Ridge.
Correct.
The city is not looking to acquire your property. There is some property that is kind of across from your subdivision that is actually out of our city limits,
Okay.
that potentially the planners were looking at as a suggestion to the city as potentially acquiring that property into our city limits. You'll also note that there is that walking trail, and part of that may be trying to obtain some easements to extend a walking trail to perhaps a future park.
Does that answer your question?
That does. But I mean, as far as the easements are concerned, that would limit my use of my property if I decided to put up a fence or anything like that.
Well,
Unless it's talking about walking down the,
it could be
drainage
some
ditch.
easement somewhere on a right-of-way that's existing.
okay.
I mean, this is just something that the planners, in their foresight, thought that would be something the city might want to look at in the future.
Okay.
But there are no immediate plans for such at this time.
Okay. With that in mind, I mean, just to, and I'm probably out of town, not quite. It would entail, I guess, making it no longer a gated community. It would mean knocking down the gate, because if you're putting a trail through there, people have to ingress and egress.
It could be
rather
on
than-
the outskirts of your subdivision as well.
Right.
And most likely, that's what it would be if the city were to move in that direction.
Okay,
But like I
So-
said, there are no plans at this point in time.
okay,
And any affected property owners would be contacted by the city, and it would be discussed in advance with the property owner.
awesome. Okay, so the last question, is it the zoning board's recommendation to go forward with the areas that we're looking at as far as potential future acquisition and the like, of what I just addressed? Because you said recommendations, the zoning board makes recommendations to the city.
Yes, that's what we do. So what was your question again?
Is it the zoning board's position to go forward with a recommendation that future acquisition or whatever is on this map?
I think what you may have missed, sir, was a flippant statement that I made, pie in the sky, okay? Because this is Garden Ridge. I've been here 18 years, and after you've been here a while, you'll know some things have a chance of happening, and some things really don't have a chance of happening, okay? That would be in the latter category. They don't have, I don't think it has a chance of happening in your or my lifetime, okay? But the planners have to look forward for that for 20 or 40 years. As the demographics change and the city changes, somebody in the future may want to say, hey, why don't we do this? Right now, it ain't happening.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Dr. Miller, real quick, can I make an announcement? After you speak, can you please come sign your name and address with me? So the first two people that spoke, could you please come and sign over here? Mr. Fritz?
Ma'am?
Am I ready? You ready?
Yeah.
Martha Stipp, 21007 Cedar Branch, Garden Ridge, Texas. I have several observations after going over the proposed ordinance. First point, the wording in this draft about impervious cover on commercial property when connected to the sewer on 2252 basically tells developers to ignore it, the percentage of maximum allowed. It kind of implies that all you need to do is ask and we'll reduce it. Why is this? There should be no need in the wording, for this wording in the ordinance. Why not keep the impervious cover on all commercial areas at 65% in order to preserve the rural aesthetic as stated in the master plan? Being connected to the sewer shouldn't matter. If developers want to build here, they need to develop according to our building codes and not ask for variances. Also, if you allow the 2252 to have just a commercial area with less impervious cover, we're going to end up looking like shirts with parking lots separated by a row of trees or shrubs, and that does not what any of us want. So please hold it at 65% in all areas. Second point, I went over your proposed plant list. I've been doing this for 3 years in the city. It's a very good plant list, but numerous plant bases I've used, I can add an additional 35 plants, mostly native plants, to your list. And the plants that I have recommend to you are deer resistant, most are native, and drought tolerant. Now, since your list only contains 70% native plants, I suggest that you tweak your ordinance because it says you must use these plants, so you're going to have to strike 30% of the plants on your list to conform to your ordinance. Why not change this and tweak your ordinance to say recommending that drought-tolerant, deer-resistant plants that xeriscape be used. That way, you would be able to add to the list and give people, you're not restricting them to just a plant list. It's not the best plant list because you've left out 35 very, very good plants. That's my recommendation. One last thing, I also see that the retail anchor at 2252 and 3009 says that, and retail could be up to 50,000 square foot and could have a parking garage. Okay, is that what you want here for our retail anchor? Just curious. You know, I guess it might be better than a gas station, but I don't think we want parking garages. Thank you.
Anybody in particular want to answer that? Wasn't the question, it was a statement more than anything else? So, statement. I'll speak to it. The impervious cover in the city is probably, with the developers in the city, is the most contentious area when they're building. Okay, they want to use a maximum amount of the lots space for development, put a building on it so they can rent it out and get some income. So that was very, very. It was an area that we spent a lot of time looking at, the impervious cover. The percentages we came up with are, I think, fair. Developers may not think that, but they haven't in the past, and I don't really expect them to think that in the future. But so far as them being just a suggestion, and not a suggestion, any developer can tell you that getting things past planning and zoning is a difficult endeavor one way or the other, because we want to keep Garden Ridge looking like Garden Ridge, as simple as that. We're all citizens and have lived here. We don't want to change it a whole lot any more than anybody else does. So you have to trust us on that. The plant list, Ms. Stith, I know I think you're a naturalist. I've heard you speak before. We can't be all-inclusive in those kind of things in terms of the plant list and stuff like that. I have no problem at all changing from must to recommendation, to recommend things. That's no problem at all. But we can't be all-inclusive. And what today may be something that is acceptable over the course of time, studies may show that something is more invasive and not really acceptable into the future. My yard is full of plants that I thought were cute and native, and I've been chasing after them ever since I put them in. Paul Davis Park has bamboo. Anybody with any sense now knows that bamboo is not something you want to put in your yard or in your park. We've been chasing after that for the last 5 years in Paul Davis Park. We've dug it up, sprayed it, buried it, and finally, I think in the last meeting I told them, I said, look, why don't we just plan on cutting it twice a year? Yeah, just make it something that Public Works has to do twice a year to keep it under control. We're spending too much time and effort following up a bad mistake in the past. So thank you, Ms. Stith. I appreciate, and I know you have that available. I suggest that probably what we can do is get with you offline and have that list available for builders in the future, but they're not going to worry about the kinds of plants so much as they're worried about the impervious cover. Excuse me.
May I make a quick response? I gave the a suggested plant list in detail to Marissa, okay?
Thank you. You're ahead of me. You're ahead of me. Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Sylvia Gangel, and I live at 6735 Bella Colina in San Antonio. And I'm a former resident of the city of Garden Ridge here for 27 years. And live here for kids grew up here, and sad to leave Garden Ridge, but I still own property here. So I wanted to express a concern primarily tonight about the Current zoning I have a B1. I own the property at the corner of 3009 and FM 2252, right across from the Shell station. And I do have a B1, neighborhood services. It is property platted back 15 years ago, approximately, right, Nancy? Something like that? Yeah, long time. So I was successful after probably 12 to 14 months of meetings, coming back and forth with planning and zoning and city council, to be successful to raise the impervious coverage from 33%, which used to be the 33% for commercial, up to 58%, with a lot of battles with everybody, but city council allowed me at a 58%. At this point in time, there are plans to develop the property. I have numerous inquiries, offers, and I am not taking any action until I know a little bit more as to how I'm going to be able to retain the right to develop the property more as an anchor tenant, than an anchor retail, than what it is proposed as a light retail. Because I think this, and I was trying to see, and it's a little bit hard to see here. I kept on doing this, like an iPhone, and I couldn't. But it looks like here it's hard to tell the color, but it appears to be light retail. Nancy and I had a conversation. I want to thank Nancy, by the way, for always giving me time to answer all the questions I have. She's always been very, very helpful to me in that regard. So I wanted just to express, and I wanted it in the record, that I oppose to be, I would feel downgraded on my zoning. On the zoning, I do want to have the capability of be able to have an opportunity to do a nice retail either mix or anchor retail, either a single tenant on that property or a combination of several buildings. Right now it's undetermined, given the opportunities I have, but I am definitely interested in having this on the record, is I would be opposed to having a downzoning on my property. I would believe that would be a violation of property rights, and I don't think the city would do that. So I wanted to express my opinion. I have 0 time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Dawn Hatch, 8377 Twisted Oaks. I'd like to thank the commission, city council, volunteers, and staff for the time and hard work they put into rewriting these ordinances. While reading them, I paid particular attention to the development terms and conditions. I understand the master plan is a guide the city will use in planning for future development, and ordinances can change according to the needs of the city and residents. As a legal assistant, I worked 27 years for a real estate attorney in San Antonio that was involved in several partnerships with Charles Marty Wender, a successful business leader and a real estate developer who developed Crown Ridge and Westover Hills in San Antonio. Marty is a true visionary, and I was fortunate to have been able to work with him and learn the steps of development. I tell you this because, as someone who has experience on the back end, you all should be very proud of yourselves for taking on such a huge and difficult responsibility to ensure that Garden Ridge will move forward in a positive way that has its best interest in mind. I'm very confident in the new composition of this commission, city council, and the leadership of our new mayor that you will recommend the best and right businesses to develop and build here. But also keeping in mind that all businesses have the right to come before this commission and present their plans, because to discourage or hinder any business may be discrimination. I have faith in this commission, the city council, and the mayor that no matter what businesses are built in Garden Ridge, those businesses will ultimately be what is best for the city and will give back to the community. I have faith that the commission and the city will work with developers regarding variances and ordinances. I met several of the local developers at a meet and greet during this past election, and I can personally say that each of them wants what is best for the city. They are young, eager to do the right thing, and have a vision, just like Marty Wender did many years ago. Again, thank you for your time and hard work.
Thank you, that was very flattering. Next, please. You got a tough act to follow.
Good evening to the commission. I am Darren Bates. I live at 20103 Regency Run. I've been here for over 6 years. I'm in my 7th year of being a Garden Ridge resident. I love it here. I was sold on Garden Ridge when I came here from a 7th generation Texan, and I'm glad that he recommended it to me. So Garden Ridge is what, not just it's a way of life, not just a place to live. And I wholeheartedly buy into that, and it sounds like a lot of people here in attendance do also. So I first have a question. My question is, with the future land use plan, that is this the plan? It's just a plan. It's not necessarily changing the zoning of the city and the city limits. Is that right?
No, you still have to apply the changing of the zoning, okay, within the plan, okay? You still have to apply for a change in zoning. So the first step, if you want to be in one of those areas, is it has to fit the use of that area, and then you come before the commission for a change in zoning, if it needs a change in zoning. We may or may not grant that at that time. That answer your question?
To speak directly to your question, sir, the future land use map, and I'll reiterate it again because some folks seem to have missed it at the beginning, is not the zoning districts, and it is not the proposed zoning districts. That was just a kind of comprehensive plan of a vision or a possible vision for the city as it contemplates growth and changes within the city.
Okay, and yes, Commissioner, it does answer my question. Thank you. So just a word of caution from a layperson is that the perception can sometimes be that that the plan or the idea of what the vision is for Garden Ridge, that I would then lead into this is what's going to be the regulation or where things need to go. The reason why I bring this up is I'm really here for a word of caution, is because so at the corner of Regency Run and 2252, right across the street is currently a golf driving range from what it looks like or used to be. And the realtor, there was a realtor there a couple years ago, and I believe the homeowner, we were in here and they were looking to have that area zoned to, I believe, light industrial, maybe medium industrial for that matter. And there seemed to be a little bit of contention with the property owner, more specifically with the realtor. And in hearing some of the discussions, it almost seemed like out of spite that there was discussions here in this building about potentially putting in something of the lines of like a lewd clothing store, maybe something of sexual nature, or maybe a massage parlor or something like that, and basically stating that they could do that. Now, there was a woman up here, I didn't catch her name, but she talked about the potential for business and not holding back businesses and such. And my word of caution is that there are people who wouldn't mind just spending all kinds of money out of spite to make Garden Ridge something what it isn't. And I would hope that the commission would have caution and care and consideration to people's plans and also intent that we could have something in Garden Ridge that we don't necessarily want to have. So, are there any questions? Go ahead, sir.
No, I think you summed it up nicely, and I think Commissioner Diaz is going through the use chart, and I think by law, Commissioner Diaz, why don't you take it?
We hear what you're saying, and just understand too that we have gone over and over and over these charts that Commissioner Jocham went over, trying trying not to break the law when we say, well, we don't want those here, and working with our lawyer and all, saying, well, here's the situation. While you may not be able to totally prohibit a particular type of business, we can put it in a place where we feel more comfortable. For example, in the chart on page 37, there is there's on the second item, it says sexually oriented business. Our preference would be, let it go to Bracken or something, you know? Well, we couldn't do that. So it is right now, by right, put in the heavy industrial district. That's the place that we have said it's permitted by right. That's the only place. There's X's along the rest of the whole chart. So again, somebody would have to want to put in that kind of business, and the only place that it's allowed in the future ordinance would be in the heavy industrial section. So we've tried to keep in mind exactly what you're talking about in certain businesses, and hope that all of us live in Garden Ridge. We want the best for Garden Ridge. And if we could have totally eliminated the whole thing, we would have. But, you know, the best we could do is say, okay, let's push it as far out as we can if somebody wanted to do that kind of business. So I hope that that kind of explains how we did this.
Yes, ma'am, it is informative, and I appreciate that. Just a comment respectfully is the heavy industrial area looks rather large, almost like the size of a Garden Ridge, so it seems like it could open up a lot of opportunity there. I'm not an expert on the topic, but I try to be, is that there are certain types of businesses that attract, you know, certain types of behavior. And if I told you where I was born, you'd probably hold it against me, so I'm not going to tell you, at least not in public. But casinos and stuff do, although they invite a lot of commerce, they also invite different types of activities that I don't think we want. And I'm out of time. Thank you.
Next, please.
Didn't mean to follow the sex topic, but I guess I will. Eric Fisher, 19186 FM 2252. I just had a quick question kind of about the zoning. So are y'all going to zone the current ones to this, like put it into play, or do we still have to apply to rezone? Specifically, I've been working with Nancy, trying to get maybe a retail. I have a spot on FM 2252 that I would like to put like a retail type thing there, but it's right now it's ag residential, and I've got to rezone it to the retail. Or are y'all going to actually zone it to that if I wait a couple months? Does that make sense?
You will have to approach the city about rezoning the
So you approach the
property.
city and fill out the paper?
If property is currently zoned in the city, then whatever the new zoning classification is with the new proposed ordinance, that will automatically move to that zoning because it's already zoned to an equivalent.
Okay.
Okay? But the property you're talking about is still in the zoned residential agriculture, and you will have to come to the city and
actually
request
rezone it, but rezone it for what the kind of the plan is
Yes.
already set for. Okay,
Yes.
that's all I just wanted to verify.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Hi, Brenda Reynolds, 20525 Wall Lane. So you'll have to bear with me because I'm new at this. So you're not changing the zoning districts. So where it's zoned, or where it says, for example, mixed use, medium density, what is that currently zoned? It's not currently zoned that, or it is?
Those are new zoning classifications.
So is that currently, so is it currently zoned residential or anything? I mean, it's got to be zoned something, right?
Well,
does the current zoning even matter? Because if somebody,
It
so
could
let's say I
matter.
wanted to open something that qualified as mixed use, where this map shows mixed use. I go to the city and say, I want to open this retail. Since this map says mixed use, and let's say my business is, it checks all the boxes on the mixed use, on the chart of being perfect for this, then the city would say, yep, it's good, it checks all the boxes, and we will approve this business for this site. Or does something else have to happen?
Mixed use is going to be an overlay district over another zoning district.
Okay, so I see one on here. So I mean this, so I just want to refer to this one mixed use, this blue teal, this
Okay.
beautiful teal area on here. Very close to my home, so I confess I'm a little interested in it. I could go on the trail to see my neighbors there. So again, if I wanted to open something here, and you keep saying it depends, you go to the city and you would have to ask the city. If I go to the city and I say, and I apply, I want to open this business, and the business complies, it meets all of the boxes on the charts and everything, and this map has this, so would the city, it seems like the city would say, yeah, it meets all of the requirements on the, future land use plan. Why not do it? Is there anything else that has to happen? Are there zoning things that have to happen? Is it that easy that the city could then just say, you're approved?
There's going to be various steps along the way to get to the point where property or what you desire to do to your property could be approved. It's not just one step. It's going to be various steps.
Okay. And is there anywhere along those additional steps where the community has an opportunity to weigh in?
There's high possibility if the property, for instance, this property that you're talking about is zoned residential agriculture.
Okay, so it is
Okay.
zoned, so that's the current.
That's the current zoning.
Okay, so this
And
is an
there would
overlay.
have to be a request to rezone that property.
Okay.
And that type of action will statutorily requires that public hearings be conducted.
Okay. Thank you, that's helpful. And do I have any time left? The only other thing I wanted to ask is if any kind of traffic study has been done regarding the impact of all of the retail and everything on 2252 and 3009, because, looking at this, obviously that would be a very, commercial intersection. There's already, accidents there. It's just going to get busier as we grow. I would suggest certainly that some kind of traffic study be done for that. And I would also just say on the medium density residential, when it was spoken to earlier, referenced, with all due respect, you spoke to it as if a developer wouldn't likely, you said, that would only happen if a developer. It would be, it's a pretty attractive area. If a developer, the more homes they could put on it, the more attractive it will be for them. So if they can put up to 8 homes on it, that will make it more attractive for a developer. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Howdy. Shane Slaughter, 9011 Cinnabar Court. Been a resident for about 7 years. Love it here. Got a couple of questions with the new zoning. As I understand it, present zoning on accessory buildings, the accessory building cannot exceed the height of the original structure. In other words, my home, if I want to add another building. With this zoning change, I see 25 feet is the limit for the vertical height. Does that lower it, or is it still the same with regards to that?
Current zoning ordinance is 35 feet. The proposed change does lower it by 10 feet.
based on that, I'm going to ask the board to consider to not do that. I have some restrictions on my property as I'm trying to get a garage built. That would hinder me unnecessarily, in my opinion. I get what we're trying to do, but I'll also tell the board, my particular house, I'm a perimeter home at Garden Ridge, and I have a big, huge high school that's right there in the way. So I think there needs to be some considerations on that and latitude on where you're trying to do this. So I don't want it to go down to 25 feet. The second thing I want to ask is the setback limits. I noticed in the current residential estate, it's 25-15, I believe, on the sides and the back. And on the new residential area you're talking about, it's going to be 10 and 15. Do I have that correct? That hasn't been developed, that you guys are waiting to see if it's going to be developed.
The proposed ordinance, none of the setbacks changed in comparison to the current zoning ordinance for that particular district?
No, they did not, but the
Okay.
new, what I call it, the RN, the new residential 4 homes per
Okay,
acre.
yes.
Those, I noticed those setback limits on the sides and the rear are a lot less than the current ones for the residential estate.
Correct.
I'm going to ask the board's consideration, because of my particular property, that I should have the same setback limits as that, and I'll tell you why. More than likely, you're going to have 4 homes per acre there. You're probably going to have a hard time getting cars in without a front-facing garage. And my particular home is not going to have a sewer system like those homes. I'm still on septic, and because of my septic limits, I have setback limits that are hard to meet if I try to build an accessory structure. I'm not trying to limit the aesthetic of Garden Ridge. I'm going to build it just like my home, but because of that, I think you should go to percentages, not just blank feet for the size of the lot. I would ask the board's consideration on that going forward. If we're going to make them smaller for there, then I don't know why we can't make them smaller for the residential side. That being said, I'm not asking for a change to the front limit. I'm okay with the front limit, but the sides and the rear, the septic systems, I'm running into problems right now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Hi, thank you for having this meeting tonight. I've been to a lot of these. I'm Pam Fritz. I live at 8927 Garden Ridge Drive. We've been out here over 30 years. And I've been to at least 2 to 3 meetings I know of where they've tried to change the residential development in the city. I presume this big push on to redefine a lot of these areas is also to increase the tax base for the city of Garden Ridge, which I'm sure we do need. But like the previous speaker up here, I would like to know what consideration you're giving to the traffic increase this is going to bring about, and also, is this going to require additional acre feet of purchase of water for the city of Garden Ridge, and how expensive is that going to be for the city and going to raise the taxes? And then how much more are we going to have increased taxes due to what the police are going to have to do, as an example? How do you intend to have accessory properties from being rented out? It's going to make our police force like hall monitors out here. I personally know of a number of attempts to people that say those are going to be for other use for themselves, and they aren't. And we've had meetings that have tried to preclude that, but I think with that being something that's there available for the entire residential area of the city, how are you going to do that? Are you going to have a neighbor reporting another neighbor, and then the police got to run out there and check it out and all of this type of thing? So I think there's a lot of things to consider. I really congratulate you all on trying to be as thorough on this as possible. But I just see some areas being rehashed over and over again on this, and for the new people that are moving into Garden Ridge, they don't have any idea. We've been, for instance, through this residential fiasco multiple times. So I just want to make sure that we're looking at all the facts here. And as far as what is this, all that development going to do with the impervious cover and possible flooding or water issues down the road towards Bracken and other areas right on our outskirts? Has that been considered at all? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Please.
Dr. Miller, thank you so much for your service to our country and to our community. Really appreciate you and to our neighborhood. I live in 9903 Michelle Hill. I'm Dan Cable. I've lived here for 17 years, love it. I noticed that the trail, you mentioned it earlier, that it's kind of pie in the sky. For that to actually be developed, what steps would have to happen for that actually to happen? I'm just curious. It's a long process, it sounds like.
It's a very long process, and city administrator spoke to a lot of it. We have to get easements, acquire the property. The homeowners, the areas where the trail goes across properties, we'd have to get permission from the homeowner. And like I said, it's pie in the skies, and I don't see it happening. If this was all raw land, possibly we could build it out like that. But these areas are already occupied, and to get consensus, as you can see here tonight, on any one issue is difficult one way or the other. I appreciate your concern, but I think Freese and Nichols, when they designed it and they looked at the results of the census, the results of the survey they did, took that all into account. That, as well as the traffic studies, they did all that stuff. They do that for a living. So they looked at what the traffic flow is now and what they anticipated being in the future. And they've worked with TxDOT in the past and know where things were going. So all these things are considered. That's why it took 3.5 years to get to where we are now. And we all were excited about the trail, and then we looked at it and said, wait a minute, this may not happen, you know? It's nice to have it there, and if some way possible we could do it, we'd like to do it, but I don't know. I look at the trail and I say, okay, that's beyond my lifetime, so I'm not going to worry about it a whole lot. I'll deal with the things that I can deal with now, like the sexually oriented businesses, the tattoo parlors and things of that nature, and let's see if we can't regulate them to a certain extent. And then we were told by law we have to provide an area for them. And so we said, okay, let's provide an area for them. And that's where we stuck them out to the side a little bit. So far as the medium density lots, if the developer wants to come in there and thinks he can make money, you're absolutely right, he can do it. But if you notice that there's a railroad tracks behind there. Okay, and even then, when he develops, he's got to develop it to maintain a certain amount of impervious cover. He's got to maintain traffic flow. The wastewater system has to go in there. The amount of money it would take for, I shouldn't say he, a developer to develop that property. And I don't think it'll happen, but with technology being what it is, it may happen. Okay, it's like the sewer system itself. I didn't think a sewer system would be here in Garden Ridge at any point in time, but now technology has allowed us, thank God, to be truthful with you, to have a sewer system, because otherwise, 3/4 acre lots along 2252 just wasn't going to generate any kind of tax base. And 15, 20 years from now, when we run out of money or can't keep up with our infrastructure, we'll be absorbed into San Antonio or some other neighboring city. So this gives us a chance to go forward. Thanks for your question, your concern. But the trail is, again, one of those. I don't want to sound flippant about it, but some of the stuff that was grandiose and pie in the sky right now to me. I hope that answers your question.
It sure does, and I just want to thank the entire commission here. You guys are doing a great job. Appreciate y'all very much. Thank you.
Anyone else? Please.
Hello, good evening. I'll try to be brief. My name's Sean Borg. I'm with Killen Griffin Fairmont in San Antonio, 100 Northeast Loop 410, Suite 650. I've worked with Nancy on a pipeline that was just recently accepted, and I love the city of Garden Ridge, and we represent a landowner over off of 2252, and just had some general questions about the overlays, really. The overlays, what can they be applied to? Any base zoning district? And if so, what uses are going to supersede the other? So say that it's a light industrial and you try to apply the neighborhood commercial overlay district on that base zoning district. But the uses don't connect. Which ones would prevail?
So the overlay districts are applicable to the 5 special zoning districts that are shown on the future land use map.
Right.
And so those districts are designed, the overlays are designed to try to give us maximum flexibility to a developer, within those properties.
Right.
So if that base district, is a district that currently allows for some form of retail or some mix of retail and residential, I would suggest to you, but it would all depend on what the actual application would be, is that if somebody came in with a more heavy-duty type of activity, a trucking business or something along those lines that just was not compatible to the underlying district or to that mixed use, then the answer would be no. But if it's compatible to the underlying district as a special use district and one of those overlays, is applicable and works, then the city would work through a developer, through those issues.
Okay. I ask because a lot of the areas is agribusiness, or I'm sorry, not agribusiness, is agricultural estate. And so if you apply an overlay, the agricultural estate is only allowed, you're really only allowed residential purposes. So if you, in that base zoning district. So if you apply the neighborhood commercial mixed use, would you only be allowed to do those same uses in that base zoning district, or would you get the uses allowed in that, say, neighborhood commercial overlay? You kind of see the conundrum?
Right. It almost sounds like for true ag property that, the route forward would then be to ask for a rezoning to a district that
right.
supports
Right.
supports the plan, or
Okay.
supports the development.
Okay.
Or potentially, even the plan use development might be the actual route to go with rather than an overlay. Or
Okay.
one of the other mixed use overlays.
Great, and that was actually my next question, is for a planned use development, is there going to be the opportunity to request certain uses with that planned use development, or is it only applicable to the development standards?
So the planned use is designed to allow for, I'm not going to say the sky's the limit, but that provides that flexibility
Okay.
To come in, with an entire development, for an actual parcel.
Okay. So we would have to submit, anybody would submit a site plan and
Right,
and very
right.
stringent things that would have to be approved, and of course by the commission and impervious cover restrictions and all those sorts of things.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
great. As far as impervious cover goes, forgive me, I didn't really see a clear definition of impervious cover. Would like low impact development, so non-impervious cover sorts of, lid designs be allowed in, say, like a parking area? Is that something that a developer could look at? So say like porous, brick, like downtown in the Pearl in San Antonio, for example, there's parts where it's pervious, but it's not impervious per se. It's not concrete, just straight concrete, but nice brick with grass growing through it and different things like that? Or is that something that, if we get there, then come on in?
The material would basically be a pervious type material,
Yes, potentially.
pervious pavers.
Yeah, this is all in theory. This is all just in theory.
I believe that the city would listen to that type of offer towards that impervious cover.
Okay, awesome. Great. And I just want to close and say, again, I really love Garden Ridge. My wife's actually a teacher over at Danville, so, you know, lots of interest in this area. So thank you guys very much, and tremendous job. It's really, really nice what you guys are doing, and I know how difficult it is. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? I see no takers at this point in time. I want to turn it over to the city secretary. She had, there was an opportunity for the citizens to write in or get in touch with city staff and have questions submitted to the city staff to be read here at the public hearing. And she has those for us this evening.
Yes, I do. So we received a few comments. I'm going to read them in full. I'm not going to stop in between anytime there's questions for y'all to address them. But I can tell you that some of these people are here in the audience, and they do expect theirs to be addressed the same way that other people that did choose to speak. I just wanted to let y'all know that I would read the whole thing in full. First one is from Catherine Barden, 8430 Twisted Oaks. I ask that you do not rezone the intersection on FM 2252 and FM 3009. The reasons that I do not think we need to rezone to commercial, especially regarding allowing a service station built in that area, are as follows. We already have at least 16 gas stations in a 4.5-mile radius of Garden Ridge. The socioeconomic status of our area does not generally work in that kind of industry. The 2 gas stations that we do have already struggle to keep employees, especially good employees. We are still mourning and shocked at the murder of Pollyanna Smotherman at Easy Mart. Instead of building more gasoline businesses, which are beginning to phase out, we need to focus on electric vehicle chargers. Based alone on the number of Teslas I see in our neighborhoods, this is the trend of vehicle purchasing occurring in our area and in the future. My family and I moved to the area 4 years ago because we liked the rural feel. Take a drive over to New Braunfels and Cibolo. Growth of this kind is not what the residents of Garden Ridge want for our community. We like it small and rural. I'm not opposed to new business, but business like what we have now. Mom and pop automotive and retail, small independent businesses, and restaurants that are not a chain. We all love Raptitude, Figlios, and Grumpy's. My question to you is, what does Garden Ridge need the tax revenue from to fund that we cannot now? Thank you for your time and consideration. The next one is from Billy Williams, 8309 Eskimo Forest. I love living in Garden Ridge and applaud both groups for a city's strategic view and master plan. My only concern regarding revising this ordinance, if not enforced regularly, hiring a full-time code compliance officer or ensuring the Garden Ridge Police Department enforces this ordinance, what is the purpose of the revision of Ordinance 13? Draft Section 2.06.07, Storage and Use of Vehicles and Equipment in Residential Zoning Districts Ordinances. Driving through or walking through our lovely city, you see RVs and boats parked adjacent to and rear of homes. How will this specific ordinance, along with the entire ordinance compliance, occur weekly or monthly? Also, going down Bat Cave, there are 2 homes with many violations, including chickens in the yard. The next one is from Sean Willis, 22119 Cristobal Drive. I'm truly thankful and appreciative of your hard work and volunteering to make our city better. As you know, the city is limited to regulate who and what will be developed in Garden Ridge, but we can control how it's developed and what guidelines they must adhere to. I think the draft zoning ordinance 13 is a great start, but will make the development of our commercial corridors better. There is a lot of good things included, but I think there are some areas that can be improved and or clarified. I've outlined them below. 2.02.03 Residential Neighborhood RN District. The paragraph states 4 units per acre, being 10,000 square feet per dwelling unit or larger. Consider revising the dwelling unit size to fit the 1/4 acre lots. Natural Features Overlay District, clarify if the 200-foot buffer only applies to the first 200 feet of property adjacent to the road from the property line to 200 feet into the property. Consider revising the word buffer to overlay. Restaurant or cafeteria, bar or tavern. Drive-through windows. The proposed ordinance states no drive-through windows will be permitted within 500 feet of a residential zoning district. This will eliminate any possibility of a drive-through window along FM 2252 or FM 3009. In example, the properties on the south side of FM 2252 across from the commercial districts on the north side that have residential zoned properties behind them are within 500 feet of the properties on the south side of FM 2252. Clarify if this ordinance is measured 500 feet from the actual window or from the property line. Off-street parking. No more than 50% of the parking may be located between the front facade and a public street. This proposed ordinance is not conducive to traditional retail development. Parking is a big factor in retail center development, and if there's not enough parking allowed in the front for customers, then properties become difficult to lease, making the project not viable. Buffer yard requirements. How will this apply to properties that are currently zoned RE that are proposed to be light retail on the land use plan? For example, on Naco Loop, there are properties that are currently partially zoned R1 to be RE districts that are adjacent to properties that have already been rezoned to B1 CC according to the master land use plan. Will these buffers apply to these properties? Required design elements. Trying to dictate the design of buildings through an ordinance can be tricky and subjective. The design elements are conducive to retail design but may be difficult to follow in all aspects of commercial development. Pedestrian shelter. Providing pedestrian shelter to meet this section for all commercial types of development is not realistic. How would this be applied to an office building with a single entry point, or a retail building with parking in the back? Perhaps some additional thought and elaboration should be considered for the various types of commercial development. Building articulation. Depth articulation of 3 feet at every 30 feet of building length can create very busy looking buildings and is not conducive to a traditional retail development with a long facade. Consider revising to a percentage of the facade over 30 feet. Also consider revising this section and add requirements for different type of commercial development. Height articulation of 5 feet for every 50 feet can also create very busy elevations and can force buildings with flat roofs to be unnecessarily tall. With the equipment screening requirements, parapets for concealing flat roofs can be pushed to 25 to 30 feet high. I believe both of these sections, along with the design elements and pedestrian shelter requirements, should be further defined per the type of commercial development. I also think the vertical and horizontal articulation requirement should be limited to 2-foot offsets over a percentage of the building facade and should also apply to the side elevations of buildings regardless if they face the street. 2-foot offsets also works better with nominal building material dimensions and creates less waste in construction. General lighting standards. The requirements of this section are in conflict with the front facade entry requirements under section 20609 E2C that calls for enhanced exterior light fixtures. Natural features overlay. This requirement under this section are not conducive to retail development and may prevent some properties to being developed altogether. I understand the intent of this section and believe it's important to preserve the open and natural space, but I think there are alternatives to consider. Street buffer. A street buffer of 40 foot along the right-of-way will push retail buildings far off the road, greatly reducing the visibility of buildings, which is extremely important to retail tenants. This could also prevent some properties from being developed due to them not having enough depth. Consider revising ordinance to a shallower depth and create more stringent landscape or site feature requirements such as what was created for the design elements of a building. Consider allowing this requirement to begin from the edge of the pavement after TxDOT widens the road. The new proposed TxDOT typical right-of-way section is 120 foot wide with the pavement surface only being 70 foot wide. This will leave 25 feet from the edge of pavement to the property line on both sides of the road. If the 40 foot is enforced from the property line, the parking lots will be pushed 65 feet from the edge of pavement, and the buildings could be another 70 foot off from there. The building could potentially be pushed back off the road over 135 feet. Some properties don't have this kind of depth to adhere to this requirement and other requirements of this ordinance. Driveways shall incorporate a dividend median at least 20 feet in width for the entire depth of the street frontage. This requirement may prevent some properties of being developed due to access requirements for TxDOT. Streetscape. Clarify if the sidewalk requirement will be part of the TxDOT improvements on FM 2252 or if this is in addition to what TxDOT has approved. Consider adding a bond option for the sidewalk requirement to prevent from having a new sidewalk being demolished during the installation of the TxDOT improvements. Developers can bond the work with the city for future development during the new road construction. The city of Cibolo has a bond option in place similar to this for properties along FM 1103 for new development. Design alternatives. I don't think the additional design alternatives are necessary for this overlay, and they are overreaching and will possibly make developers look elsewhere. These elements are not attractive to retail development, and implementing these features will raise the construction cost, possibly making project not feasible. I don't feel any of these elements truly make the development better. It is important to remember the primary goal for rewriting Ordinance 13 is to promote commercial development and set standards for the proposed development to fit within the unique community character and charm that Garden Ridge has and strives to maintain. We ultimately want to attract retail development to this area to help with sales tax dollars, so we can't adopt ordinances that are overreaching, cost prohibitive, or just prevent development altogether. A balance must be reached to attract developers to Garden Ridge while maintaining our local charm. As a design professional and land developer, I personally think a few of these requirements should be reconsidered and elaborated on. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Marissa. Does anybody want to tackle any of these tonight? I know Mr. Willis's are quite lengthy. We've worked with Mr. Willis in the past, and we respect his opinion about a variety of issues, most notably his background in architecture and in development. And none of us, although we are diverse on the commission, have that background. So then that kind of thinking doesn't just flow from us one way or the other. So I can assure Mr. Willis and everybody that's listening that we will go through them one by one, discuss them, and see if they're applicable for change. That's why we have the public hearing. The other question from Mr. Williams in terms of code enforcement stuff is something that we did consider. The police department was not an integral part of development of the ordinance, but was considered and knows what's in it. And if it was overreaching in terms of what they can do, they would have given us some feedback, okay? If Garden Ridge was a more robust city and had more income, we could certainly hire a full-time code compliance officer or even another police officer. At this point in time, it's not something we can readily do. The storage and use of vehicles, I think, in residential zoning districts, some of those houses and places you see those things stored on are grandfathered in. There's not a whole lot we can do about some of them. Others, we will in fact ask neighbors to tell on neighbors, because the police can't control every area and have a code enforcement book in their lap every time they drive up and down the street. So if it's something that's offensive to the surrounding neighbors, which in fact are the most important ones, they have to let the city know, okay? It may sound cruel, but that's how we find out about things now. Somebody tells, hey, you know, are they allowed to have chickens? And it turns out, yeah, you're allowed to have chickens. You can have so many chickens, but you can only have, I think, one rooster or no roosters. No roosters. You're allowed to have chickens, but no rooster. Who'd have thought? I'm a city boy. I didn't know chickens in the city. I said, what's going on? But as it turns out, it's an agricultural area in the past. It's allowed. What was the other question about? You have one there? Oh, the gas station thing. I know there was a presentation, several weeks ago by a potential gas station being located on 2252 and 3009. That entity has not as yet appeared before planning and zoning, okay? So we know by word of mouth and social media as much as you know, okay? And we haven't had a bite at that apple at all to see what they got planned and what the potential for that is. I've heard a lot of positive feedback about it and very little negative feedback about it. And if it fits the zoning regulations, it may get through planning and zoning, okay? Everybody's not gonna like everything that goes into the city. It's as simple as that. I thought, in fact, there were too many gas stations in the general area. I didn't count pumps and all that kind of thing. But I know that if they think it's a viable location for a business and have done the analysis the way it's supposed to, marketing analysis the way it's supposed to, they must think they're going to make money. Otherwise, they wouldn't put it there. That's the way I look at it. It would still have to fit in with our zoning. Again, Mr. Willis asked that you be patient. We take your suggestions and critique with a little bit more emphasis than maybe some other critiques, because we know your background and we've worked with you before, and they need to be addressed. All of them will be addressed, maybe not necessarily favorably, but we will look at and consider all of them. At this point in time, I think I would like to close the public hearing at 7:56. I got out of order in some things. I promised, and my apologies to the city secretary, we actually were supposed to do all the questions and then answer them one by one afterward. But to me, that was awkward, and I think it's more neighborly to answer the questions when they're put to us rather than put them all down at the end. And a lot of people that came had their questions answered, or somebody else asked a question they had similar and they could leave. There's no sense in sitting around and hearing everything else if you're not really that interested in it. So we've already done 4.3, which is discuss the comments and questions from the public hearing, unless there's some more comments and questions from the ordinance that we should be discussing. And I don't think there's anything the commission wants to do at this time and discuss anymore. I haven't gotten a high sign from anybody. So at this point in time, I don't think, well, I shouldn't say that. I was supposed to discuss and make possible recommendations related to the draft zoning ordinance, which this time we couldn't do because we had to sit down and examine some of the questions and things that the citizens put to us, and get to that point before we can make any recommendations. So that's going to have to be tabled at this point in time to make the recommendations. That's about it for things that will interest most of the people in the audience. I'm moving on to number 5, which is the ordinance number 210, which is the ordinance of the City Council of the City of Garden Ridge adopting the board and commission policy and procedures. It's actually more an internal thing for the commission. We're going to receive recommendations and consideration of appointment of Planning and Zoning Commission Chair and Vice Chair. It says here for a 1-year term. I thought they were 2-year terms. Am I wrong?
No, they're 1-year terms. Commissioners serve 2-year terms when they're appointed to the commission, but when we do chair and vice chair, we do them every October, and so it's 1-year terms.
Okay. Who'd have thought it? I don't remember doing it last year. I may have missed that meeting. In any event, the first one to consider is the chair. I think my interpretation of 210, and it might be just my interpretation, was that I was limited to 2-year terms. Be that as it may, at this point in time, I'm not interested in continuing as the chair at this point in time, mainly because I think we've had a big turnover on the commission, and now is as good a time as any for the old guys to get out of the way and listen to some of the new guys and their ideas. So I would not like to be chair any longer. I don't know if Ms. Diaz still wants to be vice chair. I'll leave that up to her. Suggestions from my colleagues for chair and vice chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Another thing is, to be truthful with you, I've sat here for 4 years plus, I believe, and the chair doesn't get the vote. The only time I get the vote is if there's a tie, and there's never been a tie, so I haven't been able to vote for 4 years. All I get to do is sit in the chair and pontificate every month, and then have to sit back and let everybody else make the decision. And so I want to be able to vote. That's basically what it comes down to. Suggestions for chair and vice chair, please. Again, let me state, I do not want to be chair in the future, and I'm looking for some suggestions for who might want to be chair and vice chair in the future. I'll put my co-commissioner on the spot. Ms. Diaz, please.
Well, I'm not sure I know what you're asking, because a minute ago you said, do you want to stay as vice chair? But, okay.
Yeah, do you want to stay as vice chair, or do you want to be, or would you entertain being the chair, moving up to the chair position? If you want to entertain moving up to the chair position, because all I hear is crickets when I ask for it, then I think that takes that off the table, and then we maybe get somebody that would be amenable to being the vice chair.
Well, Chairman Miller, I recommend Commissioner Diaz for chair, and if she would accepts, I mean, I recommend the recommendation for Commissioner Diaz for chair.
I got a recommendation and a second. Again, this is an internal thing more than anything else. It doesn't have to be approved by city council or anything of that nature. So we have a motion, so to speak, and a second. You said you want to do it. That's like 3 out of 5. And guess what? You're the chair. Now we need a motion or somebody that wants to be the vice chair. Let me add that I don't want to be the vice chair either. So we can move on.
Yeah, you want to vote.
I get to vote on this one.
I'd like to make a recommendation that Commissioner Jacobin be the vice chair.
Second.
Again, Commissioner Jacobin, there's only 4 of us here. And would you accept the position as vice chair?
Yes.
Yes, so that matter of business is done. I guess we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is future agenda items. And one of the things that I think I thought of and was pointed out to me before the meeting started, I think before we go forward, we have to address the comments and discussion we had in the public hearing, number one. So we're not ready to take this to city council yet. One of the things what I would like to have done, and I think may be something that would help us move things along a little bit, is to get with city council, maybe give them an opportunity, just 1 page, 2 page, or whatever they want to do, or ask them if they've had time to read it yet, look at it, because again, it's available to anybody. And if they had specific questions about it, get them to planning and zoning beforehand so we address them and don't have to look like deer in the headlights when they ask the questions when we go forward. I don't know if that's possible, allowable, or whatever. I'm looking for the city attorney to tell me whether I can do that.
So it is allowable so long as those council members that are interested in giving some comments go through the regular channels, which is provide those to the city secretary, and then she can distribute that information as needed.
Thank you. So I guess what I would ask then, indulgence from the city secretary to get something of that nature out before we may even make the presentation, so we know beforehand what they have questions about, because it's been out there available for a while now. It's not anything absolutely new to them. If they have questions about a specific thing and want clarification, we can address those things without having to go back and change it again when we have the second public hearing.
Okay, yeah, I can send out an email to all of council asking them if they've have any questions, concerns, comments. Now, they did receive it personally. They weren't expected to go search for it on the internet. I sent it directly to them, the presentation and the ordinance. So with it being a rather lengthy ordinance, I'm not sure that all of them have read it yet, so I can put another email out just asking them. It would also be another reminder to them. We haven't set their public hearing yet, so we also didn't set it because we weren't sure what the recommendation was going to be tonight or if there would be one. So their public hearing date has not been scheduled.
That's excellent. So we have some time to get some feedback so we can fill in the blanks on the things we left out or need to be fine-tuned. Other suggestions for future agenda items? Certainly, we're going to talk about the sewer. We're going to talk about TxDOT. And we're going to talk about 210 in one way or the other. And I think most of our time, unless somebody submits some variances or special use questions, will be in fact fine-tuning this draft zoning ordinance. Anybody else got any suggestions? The next meeting is October 12th at 6 p.m. here in City Hall. And we can move right into the second citizen comment period at this time. I think the rules are you're limited as a citizen to talk for 2 minutes at this time. And again, state your name and address, or have any takers for the second citizen comment period. You did not have to sign up for this. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Then I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn the
Second.
Planning and Zoning Commission meeting
I
this
have a
evening.
motion, I need a second.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. The Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is adjourned. Thank you.